You've probably heard of people investing their money into the stock market, trying to find the next hot stock, which, you know what, if you want to put a little bit of money into that, I'm not going to stop you. But make sure you're also thinking about just buying the economy. Now, here's a chart showing the S&P 500, the largest 500 companies in the stock market for the last 90 years. Now, what you see is despite the market crashes, despite the recessions, the market has continued to grow. See, the problem with trying to find the next hot stock and investing your money into individual companies is most people don't know when to buy, they don't know when to sell, and they don't know if the company that they're investing in is actually a good investment or not. However, if we take a look at the stock market like the S&P 500, what you'll see is that the average historical return is 10% a year. That means our stock market on average has grown by around 10% a year. Now the S&P 500, this thing that I keep throwing around, is a term for an index, meaning a group of the 500 largest companies in the stock market. And instead of you just going to go out and find the next hot company, you can just put your money into something like the S&P 500, and now you own a piece of the 500 largest companies in the stock market. Now, of course, I got to give you a disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. I can't tell you what to do, and I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you this as a point of starting your education. That way you understand the different options that you have, because of course investing has risks. You are never guaranteed to make money when you invest. In fact, you will probably lose money at some point. So make sure you always do your own due diligence and never blindly trust a random guy on YouTube. But for example, if you went onto the stock market, you went onto any stock brokerage and you bought a share of SPY, what you're doing now when you buy SPY is you're buying a piece of the S&P 500 index. So when you buy one share of SPY, you're buying a little bit of the 500 largest companies in the stock market. Now, if one of these 500 largest companies in the stock market goes bankrupt, you're still okay because you have 499 other companies in this fund, and then this fund will kick out the bankrupt company and put in a new company. So it can be managed a whole lot easier on your end because you know that historically we have seen market crashes. We have seen recessions. Our economy has seen market crashes and recessions pretty much every decade for the last century. But our economy has been resilient throughout this. And now if you just keep putting your money into something like the economy, well, now you're owning a piece of the strongest economy in the world, and you want to hold on to it for the long term because we have seen historically that this has worked. Does it guarantee it'll work in the future? No, but we've seen through history that this has worked in the past. Now, to show you the power of this and why it's so important for you to start investing sooner rather than later, let's assume that you invest $250 a month, less than $10 a day. You do this for 40 years, and even as you make more money, let's assume that you don't invest any more than $250 a month, and you get the average 10% return, which is what I was just talking about. If you do this after 40 years, your investment account is going to be worth over $1.4 million, almost $1.5 million. But if now, let's say that you have the ability to invest even more money, let's assume that you can invest $1,000 a month, and you do this for the next 40 years until you retire, you get the same 10% return. Now you're going to retire with more than $5.8 million in your account because you had these 40 years to do it. But now let's assume that you weren't as financially astute in your 20s. Maybe you start in your mid-30s. And now you invest the same $1,000 a month. And the only thing that you change is you do it for 25 years instead of 40 years, but you get the same 10% return. Now, in this instance, even though you're investing $1,000 a month, you're going to retire with around $1.3 million. Still a lot of money, but it's nowhere near what you would have had if you would have started a little bit sooner. And it's still less than what you would have had if you started investing just a little bit earlier with a quarter of the amount of money. This is why how much time your money has to grow and compound is so important, which is why if you're in your 20s, you want to start investing sooner rather than later and understand markets go up and down and continue investing through the ups and downs. Second, instead of buying a home, buy a rental property. See, everybody talks about the value of you going out and buying a home in your 20s. But when you go out and buy a home to live in, the way that you make money is if you can sell this home for a profit. What some people like to say is if this home goes up in value, you can pull cash out. But that's kind of a risky game because if you're pulling cash out to go out and buy cars, you're using the money from your home to buy things that are losing value, like a car or a vacation. So let's not talk about that. People are hoping that you can buy this home for $400,000 and you'll be able to sell it for $500,000 10 years from now. But when you sell it, you're no longer gonna have a home to live in, not to mention the fact that when you live in this home, you also have to pay for the property taxes out of your pocket, you have to pay for the insurance out of your pocket, you gotta pay for the maintenance out of your pocket, you gotta pay for the upgrades out of your pocket, and you have to pay for all the other expenses associated with the home ownership out of your pocket. versus what worked well for me was buying rental properties in my 20s instead of worrying about buying a home. Now, if you don't have the money to go out and buy a rental property, just stick with me and I'll show you another option that you have. But now, instead of you going out and buying a home to live in where you got to pay for all the expenses out of your pocket, when you go out and buy a rental property, now what you're doing is you're buying a property not to live in yourself, but to rent it out to somebody else. And if you do it correctly, now this property is going to be generating cash flow through the rent. Now, this rent is going to be used to cover the property taxes, the insurance, the maintenance, the management fees, the upgrades, and hopefully the mortgage as well, because if it's not paying for the mortgage and everything else, it is not a good cash flowing deal, and you want to find a good deal that's covering all these expenses and then putting some money in your pocket as well. So now, when you have this rental property that's paying you money every single month, and then that rental property grows in value, well, now you can sell that rental property and buy a bigger rental property. And there are a lot of tax shields that allow you to do this without paying any money in taxes. It's called a 1031 exchange. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but what it allows you to do is if you bought this property for $400,000 and you sell it for $500,000, you can sell this, take that $500,000, go out and buy a bigger rental property that's paying you more cash flow and not have to worry about any of the property appreciation taxes. Now, of course, you get the same benefit if you went out and bought your own home and you sold your home for a profit. There are a lot of tax deductions there when you sell the home for a profit as well. However, when you have the repairs and upgrades here on the rental property, it's being paid for through the tenant's rental income that you're generating instead of paying for it out of your pocket. And then you can use this rental property income to help subsidize the home that you want to buy yourself. Now, if you're saying, but Jaspreet, I don't know if I have all the money to go out and buy a rental home and then buy a home for myself. Well, another thing that you could also consider is potentially house hacking, because what house hacking allows you to do is it allows you to do one of two things. House hacking, number one, is you can go out and buy a home like this to live in yourself. And when you buy a home to live in yourself, you get to qualify for lower mortgage rates, because when you buy a home to live in yourself, you get a primary residence mortgage, and your primary residence mortgage is a lower interest rate than an investment property mortgage. So now you go out and you get a primary residence mortgage to live in this home yourself. But one of the things that nearly every mortgage allows you to do is they allow you to move out after a year and 1 day, and then you can turn this property into your rental. So now, what does this mean? Well, now you can buy this property to live in. You live there for a year and a day because you have to have the intention to live there. Well, now your intention just has to be for a year and a day. And again, get an attorney to review your mortgage, but most mortgages will allow for this. You live in this property for a year and a day. Then after a year and a day, you move out, you buy another property, or you rent somewhere, or you move out, move somewhere else, and then you turn this property into a rental. And now, because you lived there, you're able to qualify for a lower mortgage. And now you turn this property into a rental, and now you do it again and again and again. And you can do this as many times as you want, as long as you live in the property for a year and a day. And of course, talk to an attorney just to make sure that there are no specific clauses in your mortgage. But the second way that you can do house hacking is, what is a primary residence? Because a primary residence can be a single family home, it could be a condo, it could be a townhome, but it could also be a duplex, a triplex, or a quadplex. These things also qualify to be your primary residence. So now, if you want to go out and buy a home, you can go out and buy a property where you live in one unit and you have 3 other units attached, because you buy a 4-unit property, and now you rent out unit 1, unit 2, and unit 3. You live in unit 4, and now your neighbors are paying you rent every single month, and this rent can be used to cover some, if not all, of your mortgage. And then after a year and a day, well, guess what? You can also move out if you want and rent this unit out yourself. But because you're buying it to live in yourself, you still get to qualify for those lower mortgage rates, because this is your primary residence. So when it comes to now going out to buy that home, instead of just thinking about buying the home that you want to live in for the rest of your life, you can also think about generating income for the rest of your life by either buying a rental property, or by house hacking a rental property, or by house hacking a multi-unit property. This way now you can start generating income for the rest of your life, instead of just buying a property to live in, which, you know, when you have more money, you can buy a bigger property and not have to worry about the cost either. If you enjoyed this clip and you want to continue your financial education journey, I have another video that I think you'll love. All you got to do is click that button right over there. And for those of you who want to stay up to date on the top finance and business news, you can join Market Briefs, my free financial newsletter, by clicking that button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.